Everyone knows this story. Around 1870, a few French painters walked out of the studio and finally saw the light properly. It's true. It's also not the reason. 8 paintings. Every one of them made possible by a piece of equipment. Most of them painted in the worst year of somebody's life. The light didn't change. The equipment did. Number 1. The Tin Tube. Claude Monet. Woman with a Parasol. In March of 1875, Monet, Renoir, Sisley, and Berthe Morisot put 73 paintings into an auction house on the Rue Drouot, because none of them had any money. Renoir remembered how it went. The room was invaded. People howled at every bid. The doors had to be shut until the police arrived. The average price that day was 157 francs. This was painted the same year. His wife Camille. His son Jean. A field, and a wind coming through it. You can't fake that wind. To get it you have to be standing in it and working fast, and for 400 years that was close to impossible. Oil paint was ground by hand and kept in a pig's bladder you pricked with a tack. It leaked. It dried. It stayed where it was made. Then an American portraitist called John Goffrand put color into a soft tin tube with a screw cap. Renoir said later that without paint in tubes there would have been no Cézanne, no Monet, no Sisley. He was overstating it. Painters had been working outdoors for decades already, with portable easels and hinged boxes. Camille died 4 years after this, at 32. The tube outlasted her. Number 2. The Pigment. Auguste Renoir. The Skiff. The auction was Renoir's idea. 20 of those 73 paintings were his. Together they raised 2,251 francs, an average of 112. And this is what he was painting while that was going on. 2 women in a boat, on a Sunday, on the Seine. Nothing is wrong. Nobody is working. Now look at what isn't in it. There is no black. Not in the water, not under the hull, not anywhere. Renoir used white and 7 strong colors, laid down beside each other, mostly straight from the tube. On a canvas he primed white first so the light would come back up through the paint. Those 7 colors were almost new. Chrome orange, cobalt blue, emerald green, viridian, cheap synthetic ultramarine. All invented between 1800 and 1860, and not one of them invented for painters. They came out of the industry that was learning how to dye cloth. Chrome orange got affordable because chromite turned up near Paris and near Baltimore. So a man who couldn't sell a picture for more than 100 francs was working with the most advanced materials in Europe. The palette was years ahead of the market. Number 3. The Railway. Camille Pissarro. Lordship Lane Station. Pissarro left his house at Louveciennes in September of 1870, ahead of the Prussian advance. He got back the following June. The army had used it as a slaughterhouse. There were sheep pens in the kitchen. His canvases had been taken off their stretchers and worn as butchers' aprons. Around 1,500 paintings were destroyed, including work of Monet's that was being stored there. The English painter Walter Sickert made the point that mattered. Pissarro had never sold a picture in his life. What he left behind in that house was everything he had ever done. He sat out the war in South London, in Norwood, and this is what he painted there. No crowd. No incident. A train coming towards you out of Lordship Lane and the smoke going straight up into a flat sky. As far as anyone can tell, it's the first Impressionist painting to treat a railway as the subject instead of the scenery. And watch what the line is doing to the land. The cutting slices the field open. Those red terraces on the left are there because the track came first. He had lost every picture he had ever made. The first thing he painted after that was a machine. Number 4. The Suspension Bridge. Alfred Sisley. The Bridge at Villeneuve. Sisley grew up rich. His father imported luxury goods into Paris and paid him an allowance, and while the rest of them were starving he was comfortable. Then the War of 1870 destroyed the business. His father, who also disapproved of the woman he was living with, stopped the money. He was 31. From that afternoon until the end of his life he was poor. This is from 1872, right at the start of it. A suspension bridge, cast iron and stone, thrown across the Seine in 1844 to tie a village to the suburb of St. Denis. 28 years old by then, and nobody had ever called it beautiful. He painted it in the highest color he had, with day trippers in the boats underneath. That August, Paul Durand-Ruel bought it off him. The spring after that, the dealer sold it on. That sale wasn't a career. It was dinner. Sisley applied for French citizenship twice. He was refused twice. He died in 1899 of throat cancer, still a British subject, a few months after his wife. His prices began to climb almost at once. Number 5. The Girder. Gustave Caillebotte.
Le Pont de l'Europe.
On the 3rd of November, 1876, 2 days after his younger brother died without warning, Gustave Caillebotte sat down and wrote his will. He was 28. He was convinced he wouldn't live long. He was right, more or less, and made it to 45. The will left his collection to the French state. It also set aside money to pay for an Impressionist exhibition 2 years later, in the best conditions possible, after he was dead. He named Renoir as executor. At that point, almost nobody wanted these paintings. This is from the same year. Half of it is a machine. The trellis of the Pont de l'Europe, riveted, enormous, cutting the sky into triangles, with the steam of Saint Lazare coming up through it on the right. The people are small. The iron is not. He never had to sell a thing. What he did with the money instead was buy pictures from Monet, from Pissarro, from Sisley, in the years when they couldn't cover rent. 68 paintings went to the state. After a long argument, it took about 40. The rest were offered again in 1904, and again in 1908. Refused both times. When the government finally came back for them in 1928, with the fashion changed and the prices up, the family said no. Number 6. The Address Book.
Auguste Renoir.
Madame Charpentier and Her Children. Through the 1870s, Renoir, Monet, and Sisley were all writing to the same address, asking for money. The house belonged to Georges Charpentier, who published Flaubert and Zola, and to his wife Marguerite, who ran one of the most useful drawing rooms in Paris. They paid Renoir properly for this one. Look at the room while he's in it. Japanese screens, bamboo furniture, peacocks on the paneling. Everything here arrived by ship, including the taste. Then they did the thing that actually changed his life. They pushed him to go back and exhibit at the official salon. Pushed is Pissarro's word, and he didn't mean it kindly. Marguerite made sure it hung in a place of honor. Her friends started commissioning portraits. Renoir wrote to her husband that if he ever amounted to anything, it would be entirely her doing. For years earlier, he had stood in an auction room listening to strangers shout at his prices. Nobody sells a revolution without a list of names. Number 7. The Camera. Edgar Degas. The Star. The dancer is bottom right, not center. Half the stage is empty gray. And in the wings there's a man in black whose head has been taken off by a piece of scenery. He isn't a stagehand and he isn't an accident. He's an abonne. A subscriber. Wealthy men bought seasons at the Paris Opera that came with access to the wings, the foyer, and the dressing rooms, and they used it. When one of them settled on a girl, he would pay to have her promoted through the company. The dancers were called Petty's rats. Most of them came out of poor families and joined to keep those families fed, working 6 days a week. Of all the dance pictures Degas made, very few show an actual performance. He's nearly always backstage, at a rehearsal, or in a class. He painted the trade, not the show. The way he framed it he took from photographs. A camera taught him that an edge can cut, that you don't have to arrange the world to suit the rectangle. At 61 he bought one himself and used it on dancers, trying to freeze a pose, except the shutters were far too slow, so the models had to hold still for a long time under his direction. Which is the whole thing in one sentence. The technique came out of a machine. What he aimed it at was a girl, and the man waiting for her in the dark. Number 8. The Permission. Berthe Morisot. The Cradle. Go back to that auction room for a second. 73 paintings, 4 painters, a crowd shouting down every bid. The highest price of the day went to Berthe Morisot. 480 francs. She outsold Monet. She outsold Renoir. She outsold Sisley. And she still couldn't stand on a station platform on her own with an easel. So this is what she painted. Her sister watching a baby sleep through a screen of white gauze, almost all of it white on white, made indoors because indoors was where she was permitted to work. A woman of her class did not set up alone in a bar, or on a bridge over Saint Lazare, or in the wings of the opera. She had the same tin tubes as every man in this video. The same synthetic blues. The same railway timetable. She showed this in 1874, at the first exhibition. She was the only woman in the group, and she had helped organize it. The model is her sister Edma, who painted as well, and who stopped when she married. Every other picture here is about what the hardware made possible. This one is about who was allowed to touch it. Impressionism gets taught as a way of seeing. A handful of people who finally looked properly. They did look properly, but so had others, and the others didn't have tin tubes, or cheap chrome orange, or a train at 7 in the morning, or a dealer with a room in New York. The eye was never the scarce part. There's one of these every week. If you want the next one, subscribe.